Where's that, Scootaloo?
Stop it! Stop saying like that! There's not a police was supposed to say that. Hello everyone, I'm Keen47, aka Wolfkeen, and welcome to my Little Pony Vlogs for Season 3. Today, I'm talking about Sleepless in Ponyville, written by Corey Powell. Alright, time for a new writer, guys. Corey Powell. The first episode she's written, Sleepless in Ponyville. I quite like this episode. Quite a lot. And that's for multiple reasons, which I'll get into once I start talking about the episode. So, this is Corey Powell's first appearance on My Little Pony as a writer for the show, and, well, it's time for us to see how she did. The episode starts with Scootaloo basically riding her scooter through Ponyville, basically doing a couple of random tricks and stuff like that, to the point that Rainbow Dash actually compliments her, telling her that she's got nice moves. So now we cut to Scootaloo talking to Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle about what Rainbow Dash said, and then she starts to go off on a tangent, basically saying that it's like she basically told me that she's willing to teach me everything she knows and then become something like my big sister. I know someone's about to say, oh, that's stupid what you just said. Well, Scootaloo idolizes Rainbow Dash in many cases, and whenever you get a compliment from someone you idol, you pretty much do start thinking about that kind of stuff in many cases. Don't lie, we all did it as kids, and say no and I will slap you. And so basically, Scootaloo wants to try to find a way to, show Rainbow Dash what she's like and what she's made of, so maybe this can happen. So Apple Bloom basically comes up with the idea of her coming on a camping trip and, have Applejack invite them. Sweetie Belle also wants to go, but of course, Apple Bloom says, yeah, come on. And then Sweetie Belle says, good, Rarity loves camping, I'll bring her along. And of course, we switch to Rarity, which is like, I despise camping. And then we get a little reference to Sisterhood Social right here.
Applejack's going with her little sister, but, if you don't want to spend time with me.
You know what? I hate to say it, but play the clip again.
They played us like a damn fiddle!
So now we move on to basically everyone getting themselves ready for the camping trip. They got their supplies and everything ready, and then we see... You sure you packed enough, Rarity? I don't think you packed enough. I mean, do you want to pack the house with you as well? Do you want to pack the cat with you? I mean, just saying. I'm pretty sure you didn't pack everything. So, I know people try to go against this scene because Sweetie Belle is having to carry all this stuff that, Rarity is making her carry. That's kind of the thing with siblings. I can honestly admit this because me and my sister have been in situations like this where we do one a favor and we have to do that one a favor as well. Like, basically, Sweetie Belle's like, oh, you gotta come camping with me. And, the cost is basically carrying all of Rarity's stuff. That happens with siblings. Sometimes you have to give in order for you to get something, which is something that they learned in Sisterhood Social. So that is a reference to Sisterhood Social. So basically now we move on to the first campsite where we see Rainbow Dash basically cutting down trees, setting up a campsite in basically no time flat. And then Scootaloo tries her best to basically try to, approach Rainbow Dash. However, for some reason she trips so badly and then tries to play it off like it was, a part of her plan. Just like, ah! Oh, hi, my boy. Trying to be cool and all, so... So basically, as we keep going through the episode, we do see that Scootaloo and Rainbow Dash are getting, along with each other. Because Scootaloo's going to be sleeping with Rainbow Dash in her tent. And it does seem like that their, relationship does seem to kick off pretty well. So now we move on to the night portion of the story, which is basically the scary stories. Where she says that I've got a good story to tell ya. And then Scootaloo begins making a reference to Sonic Rainboom, where she's like, is the time where, Rarity got wings, and then those rings burned, and then you saved her before she plummeted to the ground? And I kind of like how Rarity in this scene kind of blushes and kind of looks away. Kind of like, oh, please don't remind me of that. I do like that, because there are, see, if I'm going to be honest with this episode has a good dynamic with at least the three members of the main six, because Applejack and Rarity, they do take subtle jabs at each other, but it's never too, mean-spirited like it is in that episode. And so basically Rainbow Dash does start talking about the scary story, But we don't really get to hear all of it. I know. Oh, we don't need to hear the entire story. But it would kind of help in some cases. Because the only bit of information that we got from the story is just about the olden pony wanting her rusty horseshoe, and that's all Scootaloo sees while in the nightmare. That just seems kind of weird in many cases. I mean, like, I know. The fact that she was able to tell a story to the point that it scared, like Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo, I guess I can understand that in many cases because, they're kids and they could be afraid of ghost stories. However, I know some people make the argument, oh, why are kids afraid of ghost stories? They shouldn't be afraid of that. How would you know? Not everyone is the same way, and not everyone has the same mentality. Me, I'm a huge horror game fan, so this kind of stuff wouldn't really faze me. But say someone who isn't into horror was listening to these stories, they would be somewhat nerve-wracked in many cases. So you would have to explain it in that way. So now what happens is basically everyone gets ready to go to bed. Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle get comforted by their sisters. And, Scootaloo keeps trying to prove how tough she is in front of Rainbow Dash by lying. And, Rainbow Dash keeps acknowledging her, basically saying, like, because you're tough. You're like me when I was a filly. However, what happens is that the nightmare seems to be affecting Scootaloo, psychologically, at least. So much so to the point that she ends up in a nightmare about the olden pony, and after being in this nightmare, she pretty much, cannot sleep and begins humming the entire night, basically unable to sleep. This begins the spiral of what happens to Scootaloo, because she ends up becoming sleep deprived. Which, I'm going to say this right now, some of the stuff that she does while sleep deprived is very likely as a sleep deprived person. Me, I suffer from constant insomnia. My sleep schedule is always messed up on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, it's 4 a.m. as I'm recording this video, so put that in perspective for 2 seconds. And she begins going through most of the symptoms of sleep deprivation. Falling asleep at random locations, having a hard time keeping her eyes open, being very jumpy and jittery, and other stuff like that. So we very much see Scootaloo going through the effects of sleep deprivation, trying to stay awake while riding her scooter, trying to get to the next campsite, yada yada yada. So now we move on to the next portion of the episode, where basically we're at the second campsite, and of course Rainbow Dash is going to be setting up another story. So basically we see how bad these nightmares are like messing with Scootaloo, to the point that she's afraid of things even during the day. Like, she thinks that she sees like these eyes and stuff like that. And she's afraid to go into the forest by herself. So then we move on to, Rainbow Dash about to tell the scary story.
Hey, I have an idea. How about I tell tonight's story?
You have a scary story for us, Scootaloo? Really? Let's hear it.
There once was a really, really nice pony who lived in a bright and sunny land where there are rainbows every day and lots of happy friends. And
No offense, but it's not a real campfire story unless some pony's shaking.
Rainbow Dash, you have no clue what she was talking about. So as Rainbow Dash begins talking about, telling the story about the headless horse, Applejack begins bringing logic into the situation, which is, again, more or less like subtle jabs at each other, because Applejack, she's the kind of person that would bring like logic into a story rather than just trying to suspend their disbelief. Kind of reminds me of someone, but I digress. And after Rainbow Dash is done telling the story, basically the other members start getting tired and they're about to get ready to go to bed. And of course, Scootaloo is racked with fear again. But so much so to the point that she doesn't want everyone to go to bed. She wants them to stay up because she doesn't want to go through the nightmare again. So Sweetie Belle ends up coming, saying, hey, does anybody want to sing a song? And Sweetie Belle, I'm not kidding, sings 99 buckets of oats on the wall to the point that everyone is falling asleep. So now we jump ahead basically to Scootaloo still trying to make sure no one goes to sleep and yada yada yada. One thing that I do notice is that Applejack does show some kind of concern to Scootaloo in this episode because of the way she's acting. But of course, Scootaloo keeps lying and not really telling the truth, so she just keeps... The thing is that, yes, Scootaloo is lying so she doesn't have to, so she can at least show how tough she is. But at the same time, because of these lies, she's worsening herself. So in many cases, she's becoming her own worst enemy, which makes sense in many cases. So now we move on to the second nightmare, which, well, of course, she's getting chased by the headless horse. And Then, when she's about to get, like, you know, caught by the headless horse, for some reason, out of flipping nowhere, Luna comes in. She was foreshadowed at one other point in the episode, like, you know, at this point in the episode, in the first nightmare, and now all of a sudden she comes in basically saying, I am the princess of the night, so it is my job to go into your dreams. Why does that feel like some kind of Deus Ex Machina? I mean, can you really disagree with me on that one, guys? That just feels like one big Deus Ex Machina. I know someone was going to be probably disagreeing with me, but think about that. There really was no build-up to Luna being able to do this kind of stuff or anything of the sort. It's like, where did you come from? So Luna tells Scootaloo that she needs to, you know, face her fears, otherwise the nightmares will keep, you know, persisting her. So Scootaloo wakes up, and then, you know, is like, oh, it's just a dream. But the headless horse isn't. And then she starts hearing some weird snoring noises, which are... I thought I snore loud. So Scootaloo begins riding into the forest on her own, and then she accidentally drives herself off a cliff to the point that she's hanging onto a branch and starts calling out for some help. Then, of course, she falls into the river and then falls off a waterfall. And then, completely out of nowhere, Rainbow Dash comes in and saves her. Where did she come from? No. Seriously, guys. Where did Rainbow Dash come from? Where? There was no indication that Rainbow Dash woke up. As a matter of fact, when we saw Scootaloo leave the cave, she was out like a light with earplugs. There would be no way Scootaloo would, you know, she would have been able to hear Scootaloo, especially considering the distance that she went. There'd be no way she'd be able to hear her leave. There'd be no way she'd be able to see her leave. There'd be no way that she'd be able to hear her while she's outside. There is no explanation to how Rainbow Dash made it there. That is a Deus Ex Machina in every way, shape, and form. 2 Deus Ex Machinas in one episode.
That's an Academy record.
Alright. I'm sorry. Overused meme is overused. I know. So, Rainbow Dash starts to berate Scootaloo, basically trying to figure out why did she do all this, and, you know, what led to her almost basically falling off a waterfall. After Scootaloo sees Luna in the moon basically saying it's time to face your fear, and Scootaloo finally admits to Rainbow Dash why she's been acting this way. Basically saying that these nightmares have been scaring me. I kept trying to be cool about them and tough about them because maybe you would start to like me and become something like my big sister. And because I felt I saw or heard the Headless Horseman, I ran onto the forest and you know the rest. This scene I really like because Rainbow Dash, in many cases, I really love the way she approached this situation. I mean, she kept her pride, basically saying, like, you know, I'm going to tell you a secret, but if you tell anyone else, I will deny it. And she even tells her that when she first heard those stories, she was afraid of them too. But then said, like, you know, like, I got, you know, like, used to the stories because I learned pretty quickly that if there was such thing, I could totally take it on. And then tell Scootaloo, yeah, she'd be willing to take her under her wing as a big sister. And, you know, we get a really heartfelt scene. So now we move on to the final part of the episode where they do finally make it to Winsome Falls. And, of course, they're doing, like, you know, sister racing, going to the certain area of Winsome Falls. We get one more nightmare where Scootaloo is actually able to confront it thanks to thinking about Rainbow Dash. And that's pretty much Sleepless in Ponyville. I quite like this episode. I do. But I can see why people like Voice of Reason don't see this episode in the top, like, you know, in their top list. Because if I'm going to be honest, the dialogue in this episode is flimsy. Like, really bad in many cases. It's like, that's Corey Powell's weakness. Because in later season episodes, you'll see this, where the dialogue is just not as good as other episodes written by other writers. This is Corey Powell's weakness. But she's good at writing a story. I'll give Corey Powell that. In this episode, she did have a good story, a good concept, and other stuff like that. But the dialogue and some of the elements in the story were a bit crap. Which is what I'm trying to say. Like, I can see why certain people don't like this episode. And I can see why people say the dialogue is stupid. Because it is. Especially in the nightmares. However, I like this episode because this is the beginning of Scootaloo and Rainbow Dash's closer relationship. Especially shown in Season 4. Which I will get into once I get into Season 4. But as the first episode to their relationship, you know, as developing, this is a good start. I like the start of this episode, and honestly, I do like the way that they kept building it up, because Scooter kept saying how much she idolized Rainbow Dash, and now it finally came to fruition in this episode. So, yeah, I quite like this episode. I really do like this episode. Definitely in my top 5 favorites. So not much else for me to say at this point. And also, guys, speaking of Voice of Reason, I will be doing a collab with him on this episode. Yeah, I know. I just said I'm going to be doing one with Toon Critic on the last episode. Well, I'm also going to be doing one with Voice of Reason on this one. We had the script ready to go at one point with this episode, but we had to scrap it and basically redo it. So at the time of me uploading this, it's probably not up yet, but hopefully later down the line you will see an annotation on the video, which will basically show you where the where the video is. So pay attention for that, because me and Voice will do a collab on that, same way how I'm going to do a collab with Toon Critic on the last episode. So not much else for me to say, guys. So until next time, I'm Keen47, aka Wolfkeen. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, guys, take care.